period, or the sort of the Middle Ages. And what happens in the Middle Ages is people basically take these ideas and they Christianize them. Right? The broadly speaking in Western thought, the Middle Ages is sort of the Christian period where Christianity is sort of Western culture, or is the dominant force in Western culture. And so as the thinkers come up, they all become Christian, and they try to, how can we map these ideas onto Christian ideas? Right? So first here, we have a guy called Augustine, or if you prefer, Augustine, but I say Augustine. And Augustine's idea is, right, where Plato has these sort of true forms happening out in heaven somewhere, Augustine says, and what those really are is ideas in the mind of God. God thinks true things. The true things are things as God thinks them. And then the world is just sort of a really bad version, or a corrupted version. If you want, sin comes into play here and these kinds of things. A corrupted version, a less pure, less perfect version of God's thoughts. Right? So God thinks what true justice is, and the best we do is try to put that into practice somehow. Right? But not very well. At least not as good as God would do it. So in this sense, everything that exists first as an idea in the mind of God, right? God thinks it first, including like creation itself. God thinks it first, and then it comes into being. Right? Existence just sort of follows from the thoughts of God, right? When God thinks something and then he's like, ooh, and I'd like that thing to exist, then it pops into existence. Right? So in this sense, you would say existence, Augustine might say, existence copies essence. Right? Oh, we down here are just kind of like little versions of like what God's thinking about up there. And because that's the case for Augustine, it comes in terms of how we come to know what's true. If what's really true is what God is thinking, then to come to know what's true, we've got to know what God is thinking. And the only way we can come to know what God is thinking is by really understanding theology well, and to a lesser extent philosophy well. But philosophy mostly only as it helps us shape theology. Right? So for him, the way to come to know the true things about the world is to know the real things about God. And what we call knowing things about God is just what we call theology. Right? That's how we come to know what's really true about the world, or how the world really is, or really ought to be. Right? So the best example we can think of here is, if you want to understand what's really true about the world, you have to understand that the world is a creation made by God. And how do I understand that the world is a creation made by God? Not by looking at the world. That won't tell you that. It's by reading and understanding the Bible. That will tell you that the world is a creation. That will tell you what's really true about the world, right? So that's the basic idea there. On the other side over here, we have Aquinas. His idea, again, he sort of takes over from Aristotle, right? Aristotle had like forms shaping matter. Aquinas has sort of a similar thing, except instead of forms, he wants to talk about natural laws. There are these natural laws, and natural laws shape creation, shape the world and how the world works. Right? So everything that exists does so in conformity with the natural laws that God has put into place. You are what you are because you follow the natural laws that God put here to shape you. That's why you can't fly, because God made laws like gravity. And gravity is such that your certain physical shape and mass can't overcome the laws of gravity and help you float into the air. Whereas birds with their winged feathers can do that. Right? So in this sense, we would say, this is going to be very similar to this one, but instead of essence, he would say maybe God's laws, which for him are what essences are. Right? Again, give shape to existence. Right? So you can see how both of these are really just kind of taking over these two broad approaches, but sort of baptizing them or Christianizing them, right? Trying to understand them through a Christian lens. Right? Now we move to what we in the business call the modern period, which is actually like 400 years ago. So in most other places, that's not very modern, but philosophers are a little behind the times. So in the modern period, we have sort of option one, which is what we here just call rationalism. Here, the idea is, right, existence is good to know. Existence is deduced from, right, that is from sort of, right, we'll talk about what deduction is in a moment, from essential truths, right, and essential has the word essences in it, right, we don't just mean like really important, we mean essential as in from essences. Right, and so that is, there are basic fundamental principles about the world, basic elements or essences of the world, and then if we want to understand those, we have to sort of understand about our world, we take what we know about that and we deduce from them what are the things that we can deduce from those things. Right? The way this happens mostly, or the primary way this happens in this era, which is still sort of with us today, is through mathematics. Right? And so things like contemporary physics, for example, especially like quantum physics and things like that, theoretical physics, is in keeping with this. Right? Because what physics does, especially theoretical physics, ironically, doesn't actually look at the physical world. It only deals with mathematics. Right? And if we know this mathematical law to be true, what can we deduce from that about other things that must be true? And it's from doing this kind of thing in ways I don't understand that they can come up with ideas like, so most of the world is made up of stuff called dark matter that we can't see or observe or know about, but our calculations tell us about 97% of existence must be this stuff, so it must be there, and that's what it, right? And then we have to figure that out. Right? But that's sort of how you get to know it. Right? But again, the idea is still there are essential truths, and then we deduce things from those to tell us about the world. The last one is empiricism. We won't spend much time with this one either, because this is the one that we, shall we say, know and live and breathe in. Right? We just sort of know that. That was the fastest second half ever. All right. Right, so here the idea is, right, there are these, now they're not God's laws anymore, now they're sort of natural laws, right? Nature just kind of got put this way somehow. There are these natural laws, and we can come to know them through the scientific method, through observation and induction. Given that we see this happen over and over and over and over and over again, we can take that and we can induce from that there must be some principle that guides this thing to happen. What is that principle? We can come and figure it out. Right, so in that sense you could say, yeah, let's go with that. Essential truths, again, essence, right? Essences, essential truths, govern nature. And so here, obviously then, in that last camp, the way to know the world properly is through science, biology, chemistry, those kinds of things, right? The inductive method, the scientific method. Okay, right, so this is a brief history of sort of how we come to know the world. The point of this brief history, or there's two things at least I want you to notice from this brief history, right? Two things. One is about what it is that is meaningful, right? What is meaningful is either the world itself is meaningful, right? The world contains its own meaning within it, or some other world is meaningful. Whether we call that heaven or what you want to call it, right? But so either this world is where meaning lies, or some other world is where meaning lies. Right? And then second, so that's the first thing I want you to notice, like the location of where meaning is. The second thing I want you to notice is how we come to know that meaning. Given meaning is in the world, then we come to know it in these ways. given meaning is outside the world, we come to know it in these ways, right? And then you can sort of, we take this, we'll just work on this side, right? Okay, so this, all the people on this side, meaning is outside the world. And then how do we come to know it? And here you can sort of trace through some of the movements of history. We come to know it through philosophy. No, we come to know it through theology. No, we come to know it through advanced mathematics. Right? And this tells us something about the shaping, the changing nature of what we value in Western culture. Now, that's the history lesson part. Now let's get back over here to the idea that existence precedes essence. Right? Now we can see a little bit more why, when in saying this, existentialism is looking at everything over there and being like, you guys have got it exactly backwards. You are wrong about everything. You guys think that there is meaning, and the job of existence is somehow to fit in with meaning. Right? Whether meaning is in the world or outside the world, there is meaning, and our job is to sort of fit in with it. Right? So the job of creatures, of existing things, is to conform to meaningful and essential structures. Right? In that sense, you could say your job on all of these in various ways, your job is to learn the rules and then follow them. Whether they're theological rules, philosophical rules, mathematical rules. Right? The nature of the rules differs, but the task is the same. Learn the rules and do what they say. Existentialism says, oh man, you guys couldn't have been more wrong if you tried. Right? For them, they say what comes first is me. I exist and I make meaning for myself. I don't conform to meaning that exists out there. I make something meaningful. I do that. You do that. We do that. If there is meaning, it's because we make it. Right? And so I'm going to give you, how many have I got? Yeah, I got 8 essential themes of existentialism, which we'll work through in a minute. They kind of fit together to make a big picture. Yeah.
I mean, isn't in a way existentialism then confirming all of them, because all of these people, Plato, Augustine, everything, they're creating in their mind some sort of meaning, whatever, that they feel to be true, and that's pretty much existentialism is saying that you create your own meaning, whatever.
Right.
But basically existentialism seems to be saying that their meaning is false, but then that basically means that any meaning you come up with is false because now there is no meaning even if you come up with it.
Right. Good. So, right? So 2 things. So first, yeah, the difference would be, as you said, and you said it well, right? On this, if existentialism is right, what these guys are doing is making up meaning, making up ways of understanding the world. That is not what these guys would think they're doing, right? If you talk to scientists, right, chemists, they're like, so, you make up any new elements in the periodic table recently? And I'm like, that's not what we're doing. We discover things that are already there, right? You talk to theologians, right, and you're like, so, you guys make up any new understandings of God recently? And they're like, that's not what we're doing. We're understanding God, right? God is, and we're just trying to understand it, right? And these guys are saying exactly as you said in the second thing, right? The first, actually, this is the first one. You should give the lecture. You're crushing it here, right? Because the first one, the first main thesis is that the world, and really all of existence in general, is absurd, and what they just mean by that is meaningless, right? These guys will say, as you were saying, there is no meaning to the world. Like there's nothing out there to discover about the way things are. What there is, right, there are no essences, there are no essential truths, there is only existence. Right? The only thing that exists, the only thing that's meaningful, the only thing that is existing. There are existing things. And those existing things make the rest of it what it is. We make meaning. We try to impose on existence some kind of structure or organization or principle for some reason or other. And we could talk about what that reason is. We'll talk about it a little bit later on. All right, that's what we're doing. So yeah, they would say exactly as you said. What these guys are doing is just making meaning for various reasons, right? And why are they doing that? Well, especially in the sort of the Christianizing era, right? Because they would say they're very skeptical about Christianity and these kinds of things in general. Not all existentialism, but someone like Sartre, for example, certainly was. They would say, why do these guys make these meanings about God? Because if I make a God who knows everything and is the principle of everything, especially in an era when almost nobody can read, and I say the only way to know this is by reading and knowing Scripture and theology. But guess who are the only people who know Scripture and theology? The church. So now if you want to know anything about the world, you got to come and ask us in the church. Right? Now we have all the power and all the control. Because you literally can't know anything true without asking us. So just trust us. Everything we tell you is what's true. Just trust us about that and do what we say, and you'll have a fine life and you'll be okay. Right? So that's in their principle what's going on, right? Everyone is just making meaning in the world. And part of that, essential element number 2, is what they call responsibility. Each one of us then as human beings have to respond to this meaningless world somehow. You're born, you're here, you got to do something. What you going to do? Well, that's number 3. We'll get back. We'll put these ones together. Number 3, ignore that. Radical freedom. Right? So we got to respond. The world is meaningless. Now you're here, you got to respond to that somehow. What you going to do? Radical freedom says, whatever you want. That's what you're going to do. Right? You can do whatever you want to do. Because there's nothing out there that's shaping you or making you do something. There is no nature that's saying you can only do this but not that. There is none of that. So your response is entirely up to you. You can do whatever it is you want to do. There are literally no limits to what you can do. But, it's a big but, number 4 is what we call thrownness, or sort of basically being in a location. Right? Thrownness is the idea. So all of us are born, but as you're born, you're sort of thrown into a world that has already been shaped and made over by other people who came before you.